Hello and welcome to NDTV. So, Israel's war in Gaza against Hamas after the October 7 terrible attacks has already claimed more than 6,500 lives in all. So, NDTV's Vishnu Shom will now take us through the latest updates and as we look at Israel ground offensive in the coming days. So, sir, off to you.
No, well, I think what would actually be fairly interesting to look at, and let's chat and just jump in with your questions, is a couple of questions. Firstly, one of the key questions is when will a ground offensive take place, and we aren't at all going to get into a prediction about that. But I think it is a reasonable question in that it was expected to have taken place so far. So, what could be some of the reasons why there has been a delay? Is it international factors, the presence of the United States, the fact that Joe Biden has said that American forces deployed in the Middle East need to be reinforced, fortified? There have been attacks on U.S. facilities in the Middle East in the last couple of days. Is that something that Israel is essentially waiting for in the event of a larger war, or is there a real sense among the Israeli forces that there is a trap which has been laid, particularly in northern Gaza, where Israeli tanks would come across considerable opposition, and that there would be a significant loss of lives? So let's look at the second point first, because I do believe that that is fairly interesting. Israel employs the Merkava 4 tank among its frontline tanks. It is widely considered to be among the world's most advanced tanks. Some would suggest, on certain design characteristics, it is the world's most advanced tank. What makes it the world's most advanced tank are a couple of features. Firstly, unlike other tanks which feature the engine to the rear, this has actually got the engine up front, which actually ensures greater crew survivability. For a small country like Israel, ensuring survivability in the event of a war is something that's important. It's also extremely heavily armored and is equipped with something called the trophy. The trophy is an advanced system which is designed to actually intercept incoming anti tank missiles, incoming rocket propelled grenades, and any projectile which is actually fired in the direction of the tank. Now, this is relatively new technology, it's prohibitively expensive. It's based on the deployment of several sensors
Okay.
on the hull and on the chassis, on the hull of the tank itself, and in other locations as well. Um, and these sensors actually detect an incoming projectile, and there is a system which fires a projectile in return, which sort of intercepts an incoming round, and as a result of it destroys as much of it as possible, so that the kinetic impact of that round, whether it's an artillery shell, whether it is an anti-tank shell coming in, or a rocket propelled grenade, or an anti-tank missile, essentially causing that incoming round to disperse, to be destroyed, and the impact which happens with the armor of the tank is not enough for it to pierce the tank. So that's what the Merkava 4 has. On the other hand, um, this is a system still very much in its infancy around the world. It's just been a couple of years. At close range, if there are rocket propelled grenades, if there are anti tank missiles, particularly if anti tank missiles, shoulder mounted, are deployed in sizable numbers by Hamas fighters, then there is a possibility of the trophy system on board the tank being overwhelmed.
Okay.
And so that is a real concern as they go in. So just getting in your state of the art tanks in a heavily fought in an area which has been very heavily built up is a cause of concern, because remember, in as much as there is a lot of rubble lying around, built up buildings and rubble work for the benefit of street fighters who know that terrain equally well.
Okay. Sir, one thing that we have been reading about a lot in the past couple of weeks is about the tunnel advantage for Hamas. So we have been constantly reading reports which are claiming that tunnels are a very significant part of the Hamas warfare tactic, and the fact that many about 200 odd hostages that have been taken from Israel cities are being trapped there. So in that case, is that a challenge? How does Israel plan to meet that challenge according to you? And what is the way in which they can try to meet it?
No, and that really is, Saket, the key point over here. what is this subterranean network which which the Hamas militants have actually built? No one really knows beyond the point, other than the Israelis saying that it does exist. It is robust. These are areas where anti-tank, I beg your pardon, where their rockets, which have been fired in the thousands on Israel, have actually been assembled. In many cases, the launchers are also thought to be partially subterranean. There are openings which come up. These short-range rockets are fired. So, to get rid of Hamas might actually involve Israeli infantry, special forces, and otherwise having to hunt down reasonably well trained uh, foot soldiers of Hamas. Now, where would they do that? Uh, are these underground tunnels, areas, essentially traps? And the moment you get into proximate spaces like that, closed areas, um, the possibility of substantial casualties and hits goes up that much more. So, all in all, it's not going to be easy. And the Israelis realize just flattening these areas from the air isn't necessarily going to get rid of Hamas. That being the case, there will be a ground offensive. But I think the Israelis are calculating this very, very closely. Going forward, how are they actually going to do this? All of this needs to be looked at and very, very closely indeed. So these are factors which the Israelis would certainly be looking at.
So one thing that that has been happening over the last few days is that the international pressure on Tel Aviv is building by the day.
Yeah.
So UN chief has spoken about it. Other countries have spoken about it. Even their strongest ally, US, has taken a stand where they are saying that Israel has to be really careful about what they're doing in Gaza. And these reports are gradually coming out. So pressure is building on them. So as they prepare the ground for an all-out offensive, are they on a tight deadline?
Well, there is a great deal of pressure, and I think that great deal of pressure also has a lot to do with international fears that this may end up becoming a regional conflict or a regional crisis. If you look at what's happened in the last 24 hours, in I believe in Lebanon, there's been a meeting of Hamas and Hezbollah and Islamic Jihad leaders. These are Islamic Jihad is an extremely hardcore terrorist group, as is Hamas, right? And Hezbollah has been having a fight with Israel for years and years. In fact, their soldiers continue or their forces continue to hit Israel to the north. So therefore, there is that sense that these forces are coming together. The X factor, of course, is Iran, which is a sworn enemy of Israel as well. Remember, Iranian missiles have been fired in the past, years and years back, decades back, in the direction of Tel Aviv. That's when we saw Patriot surface-to-air missiles actually intercept those as well. But be that as it may, nobody wants a larger war in the Middle East. And therefore, there are very active efforts to ensure that somehow or the other there is a peace which takes place now. What will the contours of that be? Nobody knows, because it's quite clear to the West, despite the fact that they're completely supporting Israel right now, that the humanitarian situation in Gaza is unacceptable. The loss of lives, whatever the numbers may be, are large and unacceptable. The fact that there is no food, fuel, water, these are issues of real concern. Therefore, going forward, they want the ground situation over there to stabilize, in as much as they say that Israel is justified in its fight against terror. Nobody wants this to actually spread beyond the region. So that is why there is this international scrutiny which is happening. And it's something which Israel is obviously balancing.
So one last thing that I wanted to just check on. Coming closer home, India has had a very calibrated approach from the beginning of this assault. We have gradually, as the picture has changed and as things have played out, we have gradually calculated our moves and our positions on the entire conflict. So, what further changes can we expect? How do we fine tune our response as the conflict gradually, as the focus gradually shifts to Gaza and the humanitarian situation in Gaza, and at the same time, Israel is one of our strongest allies, and we have a very strong defense partnership.
So, nation first is the foreign policy of this government. We've seen that in the event of the Ukraine crisis, where despite the fact that we have a very good relationship with Ukraine, we chose to import oil from Russia because that feeds a national requirement. Again, over here, it is nation first. What is India's priority over here? India's priority is to ensure that our strategic relationship with Israel remains secure. We condemn terrorism in any way, shape, or form. The Prime Minister, on day one of the attack, within hours, was very clear that It is absolutely unacceptable. At the same time, there has been a historic relationship with the Palestinians. We do support a two-state a notion, a policy as far as the West Bank and Gaza is concerned, and the Palestinian people are concerned. And of course, we have been among the world's leading providers of humanitarian aid whenever there is a crisis. So if there is an earthquake in Turkey, India is over there. If there is a humanitarian crisis in Gaza, India is there. We have been providing humanitarian aid. We've had the Indian Air Force fly in aid to Egypt, from where by road, it has managed to get enough, as I understand it, into Gaza as well. But that's something that India has always done. So India wants the bloodshed to end without any doubt. We want peace in this region, and we've got a larger interest in this as well. And what is that larger interest? We are firmly committed to the establishment of a Middle Eastern economic corridor. That Middle Eastern economic corridor would see trade coming out of the west coast of India into the Middle East through countries by rail, such as Saudi Arabia, cutting across the region and finally getting to Israel, and from ports in Israel getting to Europe. That would be huge, because it would need to see a rapprochement, a peace between Israel and the Arab world. That's something that Israel really has wanted for a very long period of time. And there is a sense and there is a concern that a lot of what may be happening now could be because terrorist groups in the area say that they don't want Israel and the Arab world coming together, and therefore they've gone ahead with this attack. Now, it may not directly be the Middle Eastern corridor that we're economic corridor that we are talking about, but it's the entire process of a rapprochement, a relative peace between Israel and the Arab world that may be concerning them. So India is involved at a macro level. There have been dynamics of which India has been a part of, and it's not directly India, which was in any way involved in this attack taking place or the counter, but it could be a factor in the thinking of why this war is taking place.
Thank you, sir, for
Thank you.
for the
Sai,
updates
thank
and
you
for
very much.
taking us through this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This one?